We meet again, empty Zoom room. It is you and I, and whoever watches this video later. Interesting. Are they looking at us from the future? What do they know that we don't know today? Is that you, Jason?
Yeah. I'm trying to. I'm signed in as myself in Zoom on my desktop, but for whatever reason, I keep coming to this meeting as Edgy. I'm trying to just figure out what in the heck's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
This is not exciting talk. There we go. Yeah. That was just for my own gratification, really. It's not really a problem. That's so weird. I don't understand. Yeah, that's a really strange interaction.
Yeah, I don't have space in my brain to understand the internals of Zoom.
I don't want to know.
So I can't even tell you how good it feels to have the Coop stuff done. That's amazing. We did it.
Oh, yes. I mean, we still have a
really
little bit
regret
of
not doing
cleanup
it a
to
year
do.
ago, but yeah.
We still have a little bit of cleanup to do, but it feels great to, have a real milestone.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like we could probably make a bunch of issues, but I've been holding back on doing that until we give the repo a final home.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll see if it's my goal to get to that this week, but there's like projecty, paperworky, reporty stuff I am still having to do, so.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. I'm not trying to rush you. Yeah.
Well, the flip side is though, if you things that get backburnered sometimes are eternally backburnered.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So I was thinking that we might walk Kevin through, like getting him set up to try and, I don't know, like push an update if we have one ready to go, or even just rescale a deployment and then rescale it back, something to prove that he could control it. But I know he can't make it today, so we'll do that next week.
Are we expecting Gretchen?
No, she locked herself out of her apartment, according to Sly.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, in that case, I suppose that we're it. So we might as well.
Yeah, is totally like formally back at school. I never saw that transition, but I assume he would be by now. Rob doesn't know either. Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Well, let's just jump straight into dev updates then. Dan.
Okay. Sorry, I don't even have the minutes open. 1 second. I'm a disaster. There we are. I don't know. You guys are mostly up to speed on this, aren't you? Yeah, I don't know. Any questions? I think you guys are fully up to speed on this.
I'm looking.
Yep. Actually, it's no longer true. I think that I owe Rob a bunch of PR review. I think I did that all late last night. Let me know if I'm wrong, Rob.
On one, you said you were going to take a deeper look later. Are you still planning to do that?
Sorry, what?
On one of them.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which I have to fix.
So wait, hang on. I'm sorry. This is a manager at another national lab with terrible timing, and I really have to take this call. I'll be back.
Okay. Well, I think that was possibly the only thing that he had that we can't that we weren't all there for.
Yeah. Should we wait like 5 minutes to see if he's
Yeah,
done with that
yeah,
call,
we
or
could do
should we
that.
just
Yeah,
keep going?
see if. Yeah, let's go ahead and. I have a feeling this will actually be pretty short since we're all just in on the same stuff. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
I show 106. Let's give him till 110.
Cool.
Well, I can go ahead and walk through quickly my update pieces because I don't think any of it is something Dan doesn't know about. So obviously, Go deployment, yay for having something. It's anything, we have something, that feels good. The log shipping actually ended up being interesting. Because initially my thought was, oh, we're gonna have to put some stuff into the images to have them write out to CloudWatch. But instead, I learned more about Kubernetes and how things work for it, which I think is probably good since that's where production is now. And found that it's got this whole concept of doing sidecar containers for management and system level stuff. And that's FluentD basically is that. And then it's got lots of plugins for shipping logs to different providers. So the nice thing about this is it's not even if we do decide we want to do something different with where the logs land, we can probably still even use the same FluentD config. So that turned out to be really nice. Did the Edgy talk last week, which prepping for it forced me to sort of go back and look through a lot of the like project management aspects of things for Scanner, which was a good thing. But that took way more time than I would have projected, just to go through docs and sort of make notes on it all. I'm still finding areas where I kind of have to put some of the same information in a few different places. Like I needed to give sort of the substantive update for the Packard grant, but then I found out this week I have to sort of like do kind of the same thing in the we have like a timelines and goals spreadsheet. I kind of need to rejigger the same stuff into that.
Is that spreadsheet that's like here are all the goals for all the grants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which is not a big deal, but I'm just still, it seems like it seems like there's a whole month of like, and this annual thing, and we need to apply for the next thing and report on the last thing, and here's the quarterly update. So that's just taken, I'm still coming across procedural things like that for the first time. So,
yeah, I feel like there's a lot of, in all parts of Edgy, including us, but also above us, which
Yeah.
you're talking about, like disorganization of like 5 million docs and places to put things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the stuff, I totally understand coming from higher ed on the reporting stuff, your deliverables for reporting are your deliverables for reporting. So those are sort of not movable, but
yeah, but they could be better organized so that you know about all of them beforehand instead of at the last moment for each one.
Yeah.
Also this.
Yeah.
Reformulate that thing for the third time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But so I am glad though that, the fact that the cadence is kind of for internal things is centered around that and a little bit of advance of that. Again, it's good that I had to give this talk ahead of some of this stuff being due, because it sort of onboarded me for finding the things. So, and then of course trying to sort out and not get Nick billed for a bunch of AWS stuff. So sorting out our AWS grant, because that's the mailbox that's supposed to go to isn't even a mailbox I have access to. So, but Gretchen has access to it now, so that's a thing. I don't know if it's going to be a problem. I don't think we can send from that address, so we'll just find out if whenever we try to ask about it, if that becomes a problem, that what we're sending from isn't actually the email address that signed up for it, but who knows. And then, so that's my, oh yeah, and then sysadmin hiring. That got some of my attention like 3 weeks ago and then just totally stalled. And then I'm about to start back up because we got to get that. There's a little bit of draft work to do for the hiring committee on that, but piece of that's waiting on me, and we're not going to hire anybody if we don't post a job. So that's all my in progress. I'm not blocked on anything. And then my up next is going through Web Monitoring Kube and cleaning out anything that we're concerned about. And yeah, as we kind of talked about previously, a few different options for how we can get things that we feel are semi-sensitive sort of out of that config, whether that's just Git ignoring a few pieces or doing something fancier. But I feel strongly that we should do something simple and just squash it and make the thing public. So that's me.
Sweet. So I guess, so for me, fixed some performance issues with AWS region stuff where we were misconfiguring and everything worked fine, but it just had performance implications, and stupid logging to the console that somehow I never noticed for, oh, I know, I never noticed it because it didn't matter until we finally shifted everything over 2 weeks ago, all the S3 stuff over, because S3 stuff before was in East and now it's in West.
And that extra hop makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, not that it was a huge deal. It's more just that, like, now it was logged into the console. Like, what are you doing? Like, you got me misconfigured. Why are you asking for this thing from East? Which is nice that it's like smart enough to be to just sort of redirect you to the right place. Unlike, you know, with EC2 and a lot of other resources, S3 will just be like, you asked for this in East and it's not in East. I'm going to put you where it is. But yeah, so it's configured correctly now so that we don't ask for it in the wrong place and then get redirected. Added some stuff to make the job running safer on Heroku, although only half a week later, we moved everything off of Heroku, so whatever. Stopped, oh yeah, fixed this thing about how we download and rehash and restore content, even if we already have it stored by hash. If we have it stored by hash, there's no point in doing that because we know that what we have is what we're asking for. So the minor efficiency gain for Internet Archive imports. I marked as in progress is through the deprecated Zopfli Webpack plugin. I should probably just merge that since I feel like everybody said it's okay. I'm debating in my head whether I want to flip it to the WebAssembly version or not, because it's not like that's a performance sensitive piece. And yep, and then the other things that are, the first one's not really blocked. I just pushed up the fix I needed to push up. And so I can just merge it. I just haven't merged it yet. So I guess that's really in the same place as the Zopfli Webpack plugin, which is basically like added a Ruby job to auto-analyze imported versions, which I added as a discussion item. We should talk more about like the right future for this, because this implementation is not what we should have long-term. And then the add-on to that, which is add the right endpoints to be able to query that information easily instead of really painfully when building analyst spreadsheets. Yeah. And that I am in the middle of rebasing off of the fixes to auto-analyze. I won't go through this. Most of the things I just said, we're done.
I'll watch the call.
Yeah, but just to review, I was in the middle of these two that are blocked. The first one is the auto analysis, no longer blocked. You said it was fine. There's a discussion item that we'll talk about next if we got some time about the right way to do that instead of the ultra quick and dirty way that's in that PR. The thing I just pushed this morning, besides cleaning up the spurious file that should not have been in there that you mentioned, is I woke up this morning and said, the the priority that we assign for the text in the source and the links changes should be scaled by the magnitude of the change, or by the percent of the whole document that was changed.
I see.
So that's the one other thing that I changed in there.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's does a log scale of the percent of the document changed.
Mm-hmm.
So only a little bit of the document counts for slightly more than only a little bit of the document, just because most of the time we'll see dramatically less than the whole document changed.
Right.
And it's scaling with a natural log right now, but we could change that if we wanted to. But yeah, so I did that. I think I just need to push that in. And then I'm in the middle of rebasing the other one on top of that. But it sounded like, this is the thing I was asking you when you got the call. It sounded like what you said to me was you wanted to take a closer look at it. Like you did a quick and you're like, looks fine in principle.
Yep.
But you want to take a closer look. So I didn't know if I should also just merge that one once it's rebased or.
Yeah, go ahead. I can always, that seems like a totally fine thing to incrementally improve. So I just wanted to note, like, this seems fine. It is, 11:30 Eastern time, and I'm looking at this on a phone. That's all.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess like there's only one commit in it that's different from the previous. Yeah. It's just that it had to change one of the things in the previous, so it had to be based on top of it.
Yeah. I looked specifically at that commit. I saw that link. That was useful. Yeah.
Sweet. The salient thing to note, other than the like giant pile of results of changing that one stupid API that was a bad choice I made a long time ago, is that those two endpoints are like stupidly expensive, or those two params are stupidly expensive to specify. Mm-hmm. So it's just like FYI, so people are aware. Because I couldn't think of any way to do that without also like doing a bunch of migrations that denormalize a bunch of data. I couldn't think of any way to do that without basically having an additional 2 queries for every version that's going to be in your result set.
Yeah,
just kind of shitty. But
all right, do those queries like kick off table scans or anything nasty like that? Like, is there something we can do to make the data just make it less angry at the database whenever it does those? That's like a detailed question.
Yeah, I mean, like they're not going to change anything. They're just selects, and they're pretty banal and simple. So, and they use things that are indexed.
Oh,
so it should be fine. They shouldn't. The queries that are added are not expensive queries in and of themselves. It's just that they are n queries instead of 1 or 2 or 3.
Got it.
So it's a like n squared operation. So not a fun time. And so got to put those in, and then the follow-on from that is to update the scraper to actually utilize those 2 params in order to have the analyst sheets that incorporate Internet Archive data actually have priorities. And I got to talk with, so that has all the information put in the same things that we currently have for the analyst sheets, so we can put in the diff hash and the text diff hash. But now that we have the calculates the priority number, we should also be putting that in there. So I'll go to the analyst meeting tonight and ask how they ideally want to have that, because there's a whole bunch of additional information, because it also adds to the annotation all the intermediate values that we're sort of calculating. So it's got the change ratio for each of the 3 types of diffs that it's looking at, and it's got the change count for each of the 3 types of diffs. So like how many links changed, how many changes were there in the text, how many changes were there in the source code, what percentage of the text changed, what percentage of the source code changed, like all that in addition to that hash and the priority. So we would figure out with them, how to fit in the priority, because it's going to screw up all their sheets, because everything's going to have to shift over by at least a column if they have the priority. And then B, do they want to also surface all those other values in the sheets, because it could potentially be useful for them rather than just the magical rolled up number that is priority.
Right.
Although, like, maybe we shouldn't propose it and just like see if they get annoyed by the magical rolled up number rather than rather than having more discrete information. And probably I should also make an issue on UI to surface that information.
Got it. You said that you were using natural log for now, but we could rethink later. As opposed, what are other alternatives that occur to you?
I mean, it seemed obvious to me that some variation of logarithm was the right way to do it. And I think the question was just like log base what?
Oh, I see. So the important thing to keep in mind there is that all logs are the same curve related by a multiplicative constant.
Yes.
So, right.
Yeah. So the question is really like how fast you want it to scale up at the start, right? So we could do like log base 10 if you wanted to go straight up, versus natural log, which is kind of a little smoother,
right?
Or a little more 45 degree-ish.
Yep. Okay, we can play with that later.
Yeah.
How tied are they to specific columns in their workflow? Are they?
As long as they're working off spreadsheets, they are super tied to specific columns, because what happens is the sheets they work off of are like all the like data columns and then all their annotation columns.
Yeah.
And so if we shove another column at the end of the data column, then they have to take their current spreadsheets and like put a blank column in there so that when they paste our data in, like, it doesn't wind up with informational data in the like annotation columns.
Got it. Yeah, I see. They're pasting our data into existing spreadsheets that they have.
Yeah, so that's mostly how people do it. That way they can have one running spreadsheet of all the stuff they've been working on for a given site. So they like add 5 blank lines and then they plop in like all the new data for this week. Yeah.
Oh man, spreadsheets are such a pile of mixed abstractions.
They really are. If only we had more people who could spend time on like just that part of the analyst UI and make it worthwhile, rather than this thing that we have that actually we say don't bother using.
Yeah. Okay, so other discussion items? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we feel about Ansible for Redis and RDS? I think we're all totally told that RDS is solving a hard problem of backups and these kinds of things. So it's just a question of cost and trouble. And I guess I'm pretty convinced, Rob, that if you think the value add of Redis is not as or I should say value add per cost premium is not as compelling as for RDS, then anything automated is fine, especially at this stage.
Yeah, I feel like the value add is just like make sure the server didn't fall over.
Right.
Like we don't have to worry about that problem, which honestly is like a reasonably big value add. But we don't need backups or any durability requirements or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's so yeah, I don't know. I don't have super strong feelings either way. If we had free credit, I'd be like, not even going to worry about strong feelings. Let's just put it on Elasticache.
Yeah. So did we run out of credits or did we run out of time?
We don't know.
Yep, it's unclear. Basically, we went through the process for, like, Gretchen and I got together and put together all the things for the grant for this upcoming year. And we submitted it at the same time that it had been submitted last year. And then I basically was like, not going to pollute my mind with this anymore. It's
Yeah.
obviously just going to take care of itself because that's how the world works.
Just like the 2016 elections.
Oh,
Hmm.
no, I was nervous about that from the get-go. Yeah, so, but instead what we found is we just started getting charged. And we weren't rejected, but we sure don't have credits. So we're trying to make sure that I found the correct place to the correct endpoint for starting a question about that.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to make sure that we look as legitimate whenever we start that query as possible, rather than being my Jason at infobiz.ru
Right.
email address, being like, give me the credits.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we're at on this. And yeah, so Nick's getting billed on his credit card currently for
I see.
AWS.
I see. Okay.
So
Well,
that's
let me say that this is another reason to have one cluster.
for now. Yeah, certainly until we get some credits. We shouldn't be in a rush to stand up a bunch of more hourly billing items.
That's interesting. I was starting to write out, like, in that components documentation. I don't know if you guys find that yet or not, but the stuff that's sort of aimed at Kevin, I was starting to write out like how staging and production works, and I stopped because I'm like, oh wait, maybe we're about to change this next week, but maybe not.
Yeah. Let's start getting thousands of dollars of you don't pay for it before we worry about that. I think that sounds like a reasonable.
Yeah. Okay, so currently the Redis cache, Rob, is the one that you hand rolled.
Yes.
Can you dump your bash history on that machine somewhere?
Probably not. Well, maybe I can. I don't know. I don't know how many like screens and
Oh, I see.
situations I had going on.
All right.
I mean,
it's not that hard to get it installed.
It's literally like apt-get install Redis and like pump up the like max memory and just turn it on. And
because
it's been unbelievably. It just sits there and hums along.
Okay.
Yeah, because the whole thing with Redis is that like your default install is just open to whatever the network lets in, and it does the thing you ask it to, right? So
yeah, I think. Oh, I did set a password in the configuration. It's because we don't want anybody just putting stuff in our Redis store.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's literally like there it is. It's not complicated. And it's been like happily it just hums along. Pretty amazing.
Well, my feeling, so to kind of go back to I'm just looking at this 117.
Yeah.
So on the RDS side, I think actually that what I wrote in Ansible is a superset of what we might want if we wanted to use an Ansible thing to deploy RDS for Kube. I basically, and it's in its own role, but I think there's basically a bunch of stuff I could cleave out of it to make it less complicated. I'd streamline it instead of using it as it is, but that's something because I just got done spending 2 weeks on it. But I could probably do pretty quickly and just roll it out into its own public Ansible role. But I think I was going to say I think that's only worth doing though if we want to do all of the other stuff that's not in Kube in Ansible. Like,
I agree. I mean, the RDS thing we will probably never do again for this deployment. So the target audience for that is, semi-hypothetical future deployers.
Right.
It will be, and I agree. Like from a completionist point of view, if we deploy Redis with Ansible, we might as well put RDS in there if the work is basically done. I guess that's your position. Well,
yeah, I would just say let's just do them the same because, like, actually, our current production one I just did from following your instructions for AWS CLI. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't really have a strong feeling, but I just don't want to have like a tool chain that's like 6 things wide for standing up 6 things.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. Part of it maybe also hinges on whatever's least complicated for probably what we will hit eventually as we expand is wanting to have a read replica for Postgres so that we are not reading on the database we're writing. So that imports are minimally in the way of what's happening when we're reading.
That's actually also a great way for getting effective bin logs for point in time. In RDS. You basically do replicas, and then you can use that for your restoration. I've not done that, but I have seen that science happen.
Do they have different byte layouts? I remember like way back in the day, I knew SQL before I knew Python, and there are like different ways to arrange the bytes. I think MySQL calls them engines that are optimized for like you can write really fast, but you can't search quickly, or you can read really fast, but you can't update quickly. Is it one of those optimizations, or is it just a straight copy?
Are you talking about replication?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just, so the MySQL thing, I mean, those are the storage engines that actually impact how, like, the files that get written to disk and the structure of them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a whole other.
That's how to serialize the data, right?
Yeah. I mean, and when you do a replica, you are basically piping that stuff over the network. So, I mean, obviously that impacts the nature of that does impact replication performance, but
I mean, is the replica itself a straight copy of the same serialization, or do you say this is a read replica, we never need to write to it, so we're actually going to make reading faster, separately from the fact that it's a second copy?
That's an order of optimization that I have never messed with on Postgres.
Okay, just a curious academic question that's not super important.
I think there are some knobs you can turn there, but I have not ever messed with turning those knobs in Postgres. But it is more about like how you set up the following in Postgres rather than like in MySQL where you're making all these choices about your storage engine. Like that's not a choice you get in Postgres. Instead, in Postgres, you choose 5 billion other things, but you don't get to choose that one.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
And I don't have a horse in the race in terms of a key value store or whatever we're using for caching. I think the fact that we have Redis is, for me, an argument for Redis. Is how not strongly I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my general feeling on it is just do Redis unless you have like a specific reason to use Memcache. Because like Redis has more features if you wind up needing them, and it's almost just as light and fast. Like they're both absurdly thin layers, so it's not like Memcache is offering you something so much better than Redis in terms of performance or lightness. So these days I just say just go with Redis unless you like really don't want to use Redis for some very specific reason.
Cool. I certainly have no experience or opinion that is worth hearing.
Okay, so I think we've sort of, do we feel like we've talked through 117 there?
Yes.
Maybe stick with Redis.
And automate the deployment of it eventually, but it's not high priority, I would say.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to say in the last comment I made there is maybe like the first step is just document the deployment, so that we know it's there, which I'm not sure if it belongs in that repo or in the Dropbox paper doc, or like somehow we need to merge those things. We should also figure that out at some point.
Right.
And yeah, anyway.
So a fair summary of this, I'm going to put a summary of this in the issue. Given current cost constraints, stick with manually managed deployment, but document the process better.
Sure.
Possibly
document it.
including it. Yeah, right. Document it all.
Yep, that seems like a very reasonable first step, no matter what we want to do anyway, is
Yeah.
document what we have. Because honestly, I feel like the less we can do on this deployment thing to just sort of put a bow on it for now and say that's good enough. And
Yeah.
so we can start working on the actual app development backlog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. This has been a real drain, and it hasn't given the analysts anything. It just makes it possible for us to not drive ourselves crazy with emergency ops work, right? One hopes. We'll see.
Okay.
Do people have time since we're way over?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man, that just ran away from me. I was not watching the clock at all. Yeah. How's everybody doing? I'm actually clear.
I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just charge on.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I had this question also. I still don't exactly understand what the pipeline is doing, simply because I have not taken the time to read, to click through the post that you put up.
Wait, which are you talking about? The process for deployment or the automated analysis?
The process for deployment.
Okay. What do you mean the pipeline?
The Circle CI pipeline stuff.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So where does that? I mean, I'm sorry, I should just read it, but can you, in 20 seconds, like, does it culminate with publishing a Docker image update?
Yes.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
somebody clicks OK.
Yes.
It does not like magically push a commit to web monitoring cube. You've been doing that manually.
Correct. It totally could, which is the last item in this discussion items that I put, which is semi-continuous. And one of those options is like, oh, maybe like when we publish a Docker image that also like adds a commit to Cube, which then causes its CI to like deploy. Waterfall changes. But different question.
It's an agile waterfall.
It's a very small, quick waterfall.
So I've
Like
thought about-
a marble rolling downstairs.
Yeah, a swinky.
It's not like a big enterprise slinky going down the stairs. It's like a quick marble.
Wait, I have thoughts about this. So I think that.
Wait a minute.
All right.
No, continue.
All right. Not about the waterfall, but I was thinking about this last night, and I think that is too magical because we will get into situations where we need to make coordinated changes. So we want an explicit step where we move the commits on the Docker images in Web Monitoring Cube, and that not to happen when you merge a PR into one project.
Okay.
So
This is kind of also why we have the workflow thing we have right now, which you want me to explain, which I will do momentarily.
Okay.
Is my same like until we're super comfortable with everything just going, put a human in the middle of the loop. So right now, so Circle CI has a feature called workflows. In theory, so when you log it in a Circle, you've got like jobs and then workflows and then others. Workflows are new in Circle CI 2. In theory, workflows are going to replace builds, since builds are now just a specially named job. And workflows are basically just a series of jobs that execute in sequence. Mm-hmm. One of the special things workflows can do is have a job that is I forget what the name of it is, but basically like hold for approval, where somebody has to actually log into Circle and click OK for the workflow to continue. So it's like a pause button in the middle of the workflow. And somebody has to explicitly click play. So I did that between running tests and verifying a build and actually publishing the Docker images. Mm-hmm. So when you land a commit on master, there's a special workflow that runs that says run the tests, and if the tests pass, wait for approval, and if you get approval, then build and publish the Docker images.
Got it. So we could use approval as this gate, is your point?
Yeah, well, yes, except no. So we've been using approval for that gate for publishing the images, and I think that was a bad choice on my part. And it's not that I think there shouldn't be a person in the loop. Maybe there should, maybe there shouldn't. We should revisit that. But basically, like, I've talked about the approval thing a few times, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only person who ever looks at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if somebody else merges a PR, they don't go in and either approve or cancel the build. And so when I log in, there's often like a whole bunch that are just like hanging around on hold for like weeks.
Right.
And occasionally I forget also, which means like even the person who knows doesn't remember. And I have like poked so many times on Circle has like a suggestion board, unless you're like an enterprise paying thousands of dollars a month customer, where you ask for help instead of like they don't actually talk to you unless you complain on Twitter. Whole different thing. But basically, it blows my mind that this hold for approval thing does not email somebody or text message somebody or something to be like, need you to say yes or no. You just have to like remember to log in once it's at that point in the process and click the button. So even me who knows about it, who's trying to keep track of it, forgets. So I think it was a bad choice to use that feature because I think it's a bad feature. It's a neat idea, except its execution is so bad that the feature is bad.
Also, what would you be pausing to think about at that point? Like once you've merged the PR.
So the reason I wanted to pause it is because I don't feel like I want to publish a Docker image for every PR. Sometimes we have multiple PRs that go together, or multiple PRs in really rapid sequence, like when Dependabot goes like, hey, you got 10 dependency updates.
Okay,
and they're all pretty straightforward, as opposed to one that's like a major update that you really want to look at. You're like, did the test pass? Great. And you're like, go. And then you're going to publish like 10 Docker images in rapid succession.
Right.
So my thinking was like, put the approval so that we're not like wasting Docker Hub space and wasting time, et cetera, like building 50 million Docker images.
Right.
And that we would only build, and also like when we merge changes that only relate to tests or documentation, I don't feel like it makes sense to publish a Docker image in that situation because it doesn't have anything to do with the running software.
So I really like the idea that you mentioned, because this is what I am doing in other places of having a release branch. Let a whole bunch of this stuff happen automatically. And some of it could be every commit, and some of it could do scheduled and then just take the latest one. And we could have kube, the pushes to kube running. We could have a release branch for that repo as well. And only periodically do that also.
Okay. So at least here, like if we want to do that for the publishing of images, that's super easy, right? Then we just start making PRs or just pushing to the release branch. And I just changed the line in the workflow that says, do this workflow off of master and say, do this workflow off of release. And then get rid of the hold for approval step.
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem like a good way? So we'll just have a special branch.
Yes.
I mean, that workflow in particular, I am happy with, just a non-default. That way you can, not have anybody get surprised by what the default branch is. Just leave that master and still have that be where we resolve PRs to. But then release off another branch. I like it.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
So I can do that today for all the actual project repos. And I realized that we just skipped halfway into the semi-continuous deployment thing, and what this one up top was actually about is how do we manage commits and then pushes of the config changes in the kube repo to the actual kube cluster.
Right.
So what I've been doing so far, because I think I'm the only person who's actually been pushing releases onto the staging cluster and now the production one, is the same cluster to the cluster. Is I just land a commit directly on master, because I feel like we've largely agreed like this thing is deployable, so I don't need to go through
Yep.
the whole process. Also, because not everybody is looking at the same things on that repo and paying attention to PRs. So I'm cool if we just keep doing that relatively unmanaged process. But I didn't know if people had strong thoughts about, like, now that we have a repo and we have management of config files, like, do we need to have a more managed process saying, push this to the cluster?
We want to make sure not to step on each other's toes.
My feeling is that that we can mostly do that since it's just us. And I mean, we all have judgment that we can use if we think something merits a PR, then do that. But, you know, by the time we have produced an image from something, I think that we are all gonna think it's okay to deploy. And if we're creating images that we don't feel like we can pull, then the problem is earlier in the pipeline. I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So then the follow-on question from that is, should we also add a thing kind of like what we just talked about doing for the publishing of the images that automatically pushes the configs to the cluster?
Even with the release branch, you could imagine wanting to make sure that, like, this bump to UI and this bump to processing land in the same, update to the cluster. Is that rare enough that we don't care and we can just specially manage that situation when we run into it?
Well, so wait, okay. I think we're conflating two different things.
Okay.
So one is just within the space of Cube, like, I make a change to one of the config files. Mm-hmm. Does that right now, I both push that to GitHub and I manually push it with Cube control to the cluster. Right. And so the immediate thing I'm asking about is, do we remove me manually pushing it to the cluster from the process and have CI or GitHub or something push the config to the cluster? Then there's a related question, which is, do we link publishing an image to doing that so that there's no human in that part of the loop?
Got it.
But I think those are two different.
Yeah, I was conflating them and now it's clear. I kind of like the idea that merging to master on the kube repo, which is the kube control updates. I'm trying to think of situations where that could be tricky.
Well, I'll let you think.
Like the order that you want to do those updates in might be different depending on what you have changed. Like, remember the situation where we added a secret? So first you update the secrets and then you update the deployment?
Yep.
But if you remove a secret, you do it in the opposite order?
I think, by the way, that is also, if we're going to start doing incident reports, I need to do one. I think that's how I screwed up the staging namespace yesterday, is I think the staging secrets we pushed, but then we never redeployed a pod using them. Because I think it was a spurious new line in the staging secrets that broke it.
Oh.
Which is why the staging namespace broke and the production namespace did not when I deployed the same thing to both.
I didn't see that breakage go by. Where was that discussed?
I think the only thing I said about it was in the commit to the Cube repo.
Oh, okay.
Let me pull it up.
I mean, no big deal at all. I just want to make sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, this is why I'm saying, like, we should figure out where we're doing that incident report situation, and then I should do one. It wasn't like a huge deal. It was just unbelievably confusing because I pushed new configs for the import worker in the API server, and in staging, both of those just got locked into a like reboot, back off, reboot, back off, reboot,
Yeah.
back off cycle.
I see.
And
That was
the logs were just like
Yeah.
out of memory scoring like random address. Right. And I'm just like, what could I have possibly done that would cause this? And so I'm like Googling around, and like somebody on Stack Overflow was like, oh, I got this error when I had a like invalidly base64 encoded thing in my secrets file. And I'm like, that seems nonsense, but okay. Like if that's an error you got, then
Oh.
let it go.
That's what I was talking about with one of those keys was not encoded right in staging. That stuck me for testing, but I couldn't remember what it was. I just remembered because it's like a kernel error.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's awful.
It's like it's
non-stack
nonsense.
trace. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the commit with my way too brief description of a thing happened. Mostly it was all fine. I just had to like do incremental updates so that it would actually redeploy and update the secrets file, and that did seem to resolve it. But it definitely took me a stupid amount of time to figure out that it was the secrets file.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is that we had pushed my updates to the staging secrets after we actually deployed stuff to staging, and then we never redeployed anything to staging after. So when I pushed that DB change was the first time the staging redeployed with those secrets,
Right.
and that's why it exploded then.
Yep. That added basically like an extra day and a half to my learning kube because it was like deploy the thing, but yeah, you can't even boot. Like,
Does not give you remotely helpful error about why you can't boot.
Yeah, that's right. The thought. So I'm a little nervous about trying to imagine our way into a solution for this, but I'm sure that the things we get. I mean, like the one that I know best, the Jupyter one, uses Helm for this. I agree we don't use Helm in the next several months, at least. So we should look to see how people do Kubernetes over Circle. And if there's an obvious way to do it, then I think we should do it. And if there's not, we should probably not waste time trying to invent one.
How about this? It sounds like, it's clear that this is more complicated than just push all the configs. Because actually some of the configs have to go in a certain order.
We got to use the word templates. It's confusing me because there's configuration templates.
So I don't. Why is that named templates? Because we don't, or is that's the right Kubernetes?
That's what the tutorial called it. I don't know. Maybe
because we're not using them as templates. They're like
they're not templates. Yeah, they're more like configs.
Okay. Anyway,
it's the word they use. Yeah.
So anyway, So what I was trying to say was, it sounds like it's straightforward that it's obvious that it's more complicated than just do it. And going back to what Jason said about like, let's not overcomplicate things in this arena. Let's log an issue that says, look into how people are doing this on CI servers, in particular on Circle, but kind of backburner it. Let somebody, any of us, work on poking into that when we have time or the desire, but not make it a thing that we are actually worried about doing. And that means for now, we won't try to automate the pushing of a configuration to the cluster.
So the only thing we're changing from the status quo is moving to a release branch and your workflow and no human confirmation.
For processing DB and UI, but not for Kube.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And we could also update, I think it would even be fine to update the images referenced in Kube, but just not push that.
Oh, like you could automatically file a PR?
Yeah.
I was about to say the same.
Like that would be fine. Or I mean, we could also switch to latest if we're brave. That's why I have the test branch on. I don't think we should. No. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. No. Nope. I
Yeah,
just thought about what that would mean.
That's not a,
No,
yeah, we
no.
very intentionally did not do that.
Nope. That was just mind.
Okay, so how about this? I'm going to make the change to support the release branch after we hang up.
Cool.
Does somebody want to own scripting those things so that they automatically open PRs on Cube?
That probably is a reasonable thing for me to try to do, because I have done that in Travis. So it's a thing I can probably sort through.
Cool. I have never done that, and I'm glad that Jason has. That's good.
Before you dive into it, 2 thoughts. One, probably we want to wait until we get that Cube repo into Edgy so that we don't have to worry about like really crazy GitHub permissions cross org. And 2, file yourself an issue since you're not going to do it right away. And when you do it, think hard about whether this makes sense as the thing to put your time into right now, as opposed to the other stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely an after thing for sure. Well, you know what? What if we just make an issue for maybe we should do that later? That could also go there.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. That's looking for.
We want to make the repo public first to make it easier.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Yeah.
So, and I also kind of want to make the repo public so we can start having issues. Do we want to, in order to not be sort of blocked on where do we track all this work we want to do on the Kubernetes stuff, just say we're going to force push to master and move the repo from Daniel B. Allen to Edgy, and then we can keep the issue history.
What?
Well, is whatever GitHub has floating around internally gonna still have some history if you do that?
I was thinking the PR branches might still exist.
In the issue histories, yeah.
Yeah, forget. I don't like it anymore.
I see what you're saying. You're talking about changing ownership of that repo, basically squashing it, killing the history, and then changing ownership of the repo.
To move the issues over. But you know what? We don't have to do that.
You know what? I could also go ahead and we could just go ahead and create an empty public one now.
That's
and
better.
we can just put a readme that says "Don't use me yet. I'm nothing."
Yeah.
And we can start putting issues in it.
Yep, I like that better.
Yes, good.
I do feel like our brains are overflowing with ideas, and I've gotten them written in pencil on papers on my desk. But it would be good to start creating a.
Yeah. Here I'm going to make an action item for me. So that is something. Since my job is to review the current one, I will go ahead and make the empty repo.
Another thought. In the cold light of day, and having thought about this for a minute, I'm feeling good about killing all of the Route 53s that we aren't using, and they do cost something just to exist. Do you want me to go and do that after this call and call y'all back if I've broken the cluster?
I would advise you to not break the cluster. That's my very operational advice.
I'm glad you're here to tell us these things, Jason.
Do it at the time when you have 2 more hours than you think you need.
Yeah.
That way, if things do explode, you can both let us know and have time to redress it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Read only Fridays.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. I will not do it at 3 p.m. then. I'll do it tomorrow or Friday.
Okay. Write yourself a stupid issue like my do it on Friday of like shutting down Heroku stuff.
Yep. Were there more discussion points? I think there might have been 1 or 2 more.
So we hit discussion item 2 and discussion item 4. Discussion item 3 was let's revisit this automated analysis thing. So does everybody feel comfortable, like they've got a sense of like what the algorithm is and how the interplay of data moves around with what I am about to merge?
The second one less than the first one,
Okay.
but only because I haven't. You don't necessarily need to verbally explain that.
Well, I'm going to do it anyway so that it's even if it's poorly documented, it exists in a call that somebody can watch.
Okay, that's fine.
So what's happening now in that PR is the import worker at the end of all its work, it goes and gathers up a list of all the versions that it created.
Mm-hmm.
And then it triggers or it queues up a analyze change job for each of them. An analyze change job is now another job in the DB that goes through and basically it'll take a pair of versions or one version and its previous version. Mm-hmm. And it will like do an analysis, which basically means like look at them, figure out some stuff, and then post an annotation. And what it does for that analysis, and then depending on what you have set, it will also do an analysis for the version you asked and the base version that we have.
Yeah.
And anyway, so in the analysis that it does is it looks at the links diff, the source diff, and the text diff. Mm-hmm. And each one of them has a sort of like baseline anyway, so for each of those, it puts in the annotation it's going to create a hash of the version of that diff with only the change lines, and so that it's similar to what's going on with the versionista change hashes, diff hashes. And that's important because sans context, that means changes across pages that are basically the same content, but at a slightly different place in the page, hash the same. Versus if we had context, then they would hash differently. And the point of that is to say like, the same change was made across all these pages. So we actually want to not have context, which is unusual.
Right.
So that's the way we do those. And then it also puts in the annotation a count of the changes in each of those diffs. And then the last thing it does is it calculates, and it puts in a ratio of amount changed. So it counts the number of characters in unchanged and changed chunks, and then divides the number of characters in the changed chunks over the number of characters in all of the chunks. Just to say like what percent of the document was modified. And then it calculates a single priority value based on all of those, and priority is the one that we treat specially in annotations and raise up to the change level. So change has a priority, which it gets from an annotation. And it calculates that priority slightly differently for each of those diff types. For the source and text diffs, it only takes one of those two diffs into account. If there were textual changes, then it only takes the textual changes into account because they imply source changes and we'd be like doubling up on source changes otherwise. And it assigns a sort of baseline, like you get at least as much priority for having had a change, and then an additional amount that is multiplied by the log of the ratio of changed amount. And it does that. It gives you between 0.1 and 0.4 priority for a textual change. It gives you between 0 and 0.1 priority for a source change, and it gives you between 0.05 and 0.25 priority for a links change. And then all of those get added up to get your total priority.
Cool.
And then the subsequent PR adds the ability to say, when I want a single version or a list of versions, also give me the change that is the change between this version and the previous version, and the change that is the change between this version and the earliest version of this page, of the same page. So that when we're calculating analyst sheets and we get a list of all the versions, we're also going to get the change information along with them. And then we can use that to replace what we currently do with Versionista, which is have all those hashes in the source metadata. Now they'll come from annotations, and they'll be available for all sources because we just run those against all imported versions. And we can use those to fill in the spreadsheet.
So when you do a query against the version the database grabs a special annotation by a special user?
It grabs a special change, and changes have the current annotation denormalized in them.
Right. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. So the roll up of like all the annotations so far.
Right.
And the latest value for any given field twins in that scheme.
What's special about that annotation? From the point of view of the schema?
From the point of view of the...
Provide multiple analysis queues, some of which took a longer time or whatever, or multiple humans mixed in there. How can I tell this one came from this processing chain?
So at the level of like you're asking for a version and it gives you back a change, and if you're just looking at current annotation, you don't get any of that information, but the change you can always get a list of all the annotations from, and every annotation has a time and an author. And the user, there's a special user for making these automated annotations. I think the scheme, at least I always envisioned, is that any service or automated thing or whatever that's making annotations would have its own account.
Yep.
That way we understand like what, you know, so for a user, it's a user. For a service, it's more like the user agent, you know.
Yep.
So that
it's like a Unix service account or something.
Yes. We don't have any meaningful way to differentiate those right now in the system, other than just knowing which users are bots and which aren't.
I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It might be interesting to think about some place to put in the annotation, like the version of the software that's being run. So if we have a bad batch.
Oh yeah.
That's a good point. We could just make that a field in the annotation.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah,
I think that's probably good enough from the point of view of the schema.
Yeah. Okay.
So having just been walked through all of that, that gives me a stronger opinion about whether or not we need to explode the priority value. My gut check just says probably not. Like probably just leave it, because you know those analyst sheets are already just have so much stuff to scroll through on them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean you can ask them, sure, but I don't know.
You're probably right about the sheets, but the minute that we're not stuck to sheets, there's a lot of heuristic guesswork in the relative value of link diff log percentage and all that. There's a lot of compression happening.
Sure. I mean, absolutely. It's pretty opaque.
Yeah.
That's why I was thinking also like a next thing that I should do is make myself an issue for surfacing that data in the UI. So not just the priority, but the UI could also show like all those other automated annotation bits. So maybe we only put the priority in the analyst sheets, but once they click on it, they can see all the things that we've had to say.
Yeah.
That an automated system had to say.
Right. There's two pieces of context there that would be interesting to surface. There's like how changed is this compared to, and basically the average is what we're saying, or compared to some shared baseline. But then you could also want to see like a spark chart of has this changed more than the usual amount of churn.
I think the way we should attack that to start with is getting back to that old timeline.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Because my whole idea with that, or one of the important ideas in that timeline was that the dots for each version would be sized based on the magnitude of change.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So it's just sort of like, at least for that page's history, as opposed to like across all the content that we have.
Right.
That page
No,
is-
that's what I think you want it per page in that content.
yeah, you'd see it like right in your face of like, oh, here's how dramatic this change to this page was in terms of scale,
Right.
not necessarily in terms of what's actually there.
I sort of hate size of dot visualizations, but that's a bike shed tweak.
I mean, there are probably, because I would like that timeline to do a lot of visualization duty. And so there's probably like 50 million things that we could work through on it.
Yeah.
Well,
we're down a
be able
rabbit
to
hole.
more clearly show when one was like an error response code, or when one was like a different content type for some reason, or like which ones have annotations. Because I was thinking like you could also have a little bar on the bottom that links two versions or links different versions for ones that are annotated, right? So you could see at a glance like, oh, this change and this change and this change were annotated, but like there's no annotation that connects all of these, or like there's a gap in the middle that doesn't have an annotation, whatever.
Right.
All of these things that we could do with a nicer way of picking the versions to compare.
Right. Cool. Can I ask, I know we're way over, but where is everyone's head, where are everyone's heads now with respect to sort of why are there two Jasons? That was terrifying.
For whatever reason, Zoom
Wow.
No, not good.
screw up, so up and came back in.
Still having a hard time.
Do we have you now? Hello? Nope. My tired brain was literally like, oh, who joined the call? Oh my God, there are two Jasons. Okay, well, this is sort of a you question. I wonder if Jason can hear us. At some point when I was less engaged, it became clear from the analysts that they really, really wanted annotations in the app. They were like, Weave Google Sheets is the thing they actually want soon. Is that more important than Weave Versionista?
Well,
given how tough IA is and how we sort of need to build our own scraper now?
I haven't attempted to revisit the conversation with anybody about dollars and Versionista.
Yeah, okay.
So I feel like the thing with annotations is this would really improve our workflow thing. And the thing with Versionista is we got hard deadlines thing.
Yeah.
That is the way it's been spoken of to me, is that this is a non-negotiable operational thing that is going to happen.
Yeah, and I think especially if we aren't able to work out something with the AWS credits situation.
Right. And we can't have both, basically.
I mean, it's definitely adding a lot to our costs.
Yeah, okay.
If we can't. Yeah.
But that doesn't, I mean.
You there, Jason?
Yeah, I just came back in. I'm not sure what's happening here.
Okay, well, that sounds like I'm up to speed on that.
Yeah, I mean, more than anything else, actually, I'm just really happy that I'm going to be able to merge this automated analysis thing.
Yeah.
Since to me, that's the first thing that feels like we're actually doing something here that's more useful than the really kludged together system.
Yeah.
Analysts started with a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Like now with that, we are theoretically at least offering something that is a market improvement.
Right.
They're going to get something that tells them, look at these changes first.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So I think maybe we should revisit all these questions I have about automated analysis separately
Yeah.
on a GitHub issue, and then we'll talk about them synchronously next week. Because otherwise I feel like we're cutting him out of an important conversation about like where the pieces go.
Definitely. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Maybe I might be on the analyst call tonight. I'm not sure.
Okay. Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.